An energetic 17-year-old Kelsie shared an unbreakable bond with her father, Kris. Surfing was their passion, a shared love that strengthened their tight relationship. So when the family and a few close friends decided to venture out to the coast for a day of wave riding, they knew they were in for something special. Their destination was Yallingup Beach, a picturesque coastal haven in West Australia. The shimmering waters were like a tapestry of sapphire and turquoise, undulating gently under the bright sun. The sand was pristine, as soft as velvet, and as white as snow, stretching as far as the eye could see. The air was filled with a sweet and salty scent of the ocean, mingled with a faint hint of coconut oil. As they approached the shoreline, the roar of the surf grew louder, a symphony of sound that thrilled and exhilarated them. Kelsie and Kris couldn't wait to get out into the water and feel the adrenaline rush that only surfing could bring. The day had dawned bright and beautiful, promising adventure and excitement. The rest of the family and friends were already reveling in the joys of the beach, soaking up the sun and frolicking in the surf. With their shared love for surfing, Kelsie and Kris knew they had to get in on the action. It was barely 10 in the morning, and they couldn't wait to catch some waves before lunch. As they paddled out to the waves, the thrill of anticipation coursed through their veins. The ocean was alive, with the waves breaking the surf in a constant rhythm, like a heartbeat that echoed the universe's pulse. They felt as if they were part of a grand symphony, riding the waves in perfect harmony with the ocean. The wind was in their hair, the sun on their backs, and the salt water refreshing their skin. They laughed, shouted, and whooped joyfully as they rode the waves skillfully and gracefully. But even the most exhilarating experiences must end. And after a while, Kelsie and Kris felt the fatigue setting in. They knew it was time to take a breather, and they rested on their surfboards, bobbing gently on the waves. As Kelsie and Kris lay on their backs on their surfboards, they chatted animatedly about their plans for the night ahead. The sky was a canvas of vivid hues, with the sun slowly setting on the horizon. The ocean was tranquil, a sea of tranquility that mirrored their inner peace. But suddenly, the serenity was shattered by a blood-curdling scream that echoed across the water. Kris whipped his head around, his heart racing with fear and anxiety. What he saw made his blood run cold. An 18-foot great white shark was latched onto Kelsie's leg, its razor-sharp teeth tearing through flesh and bone. She held onto her surfboard for dear life, her face twisted in agony and terror. Kris's heart pounded as he paddled towards Kelsie, his mind racing with fear and adrenaline. The sight before him was a nightmare come to life. The massive great white shark was thrashing and mauling Kelsie in the water, its jaws locked onto her leg like an iron grip. The water around them was churning, a maelstrom of chaos and violence. Kris knew he had to act fast to save his daughter's life. He paddled with all his strength, his muscles burning with the effort as he closed in on Kelsie and the shark. But then, a swift snap. The shark tore Kelsie's leg off, its razor-sharp teeth slicing through flesh and bone like butter. The water around them turned a deep, dark red, a horrifying mix of salt water and blood. Kris's heart was pounding, his body shaking with adrenaline as he swam towards Kelsie, his mind racing with fear and desperation. But then, in one horrifying moment, everything changed. The massive great white shark lunged at Kelsie with terrifying speed, its jaws gaping wide as it aimed for the poor girl's head. Kelsie could only watch in horror as the shark closed in on his daughter. He could hear its jaw snapping shut with bone-chilling force, echoing across the water like a gunshot. And then in an instant, it was over. The shark's teeth easily tore through Kelsie's flesh and bone, decapitating her in one swift, brutal snap. The water around them was thick with blood, the ocean's surface now a dark, murky red. Kris's heart felt like it had been ripped from his chest, his mind unable to process what had just happened. He had been too late, too slow to save his beloved daughter from the jaws of this monster. The attack had been sudden and ferocious, the shark's massive jaws tearing through Kelsie's body with terrifying speed and power. But just as quickly as it had begun, it was over. The shark retreated into the depths, leaving only a pool of blood and Kelsie's mangled, lifeless body floating in the ocean. The patrollers arrived too late to save Kelsie, their efforts rendered futile by the brutality of the attack. All they could do was watch in horror as Kris clutched his daughter's body, his tears mingling with the salt water as he grieved for the loss of his beloved child. As the sun began to peek over the horizon, casting a warm glow over the tranquil waters of Kauai, Hawaii, the waves rose and fell in perfect rhythm. They were like graceful dancers, their movements fluid and hypnotic, luring surfers to their embrace. And among the daring riders was Max, a fearless 17-year-old who reveled in the thrill of the ocean. Max and his friends were in their element, their bodies attuned to the ebb and flow of the waves. With each surge, they launched onto their boards, feeling the exhilaration of the wind in their hair and the salty spray on their faces. The waves were a playground where they could forget the world and live in the moment. As they rode the waves with effortless skill, the sun beat down on them, casting shadows that danced across the water. The world seemed to fade away, leaving only the surfers and their boards riding the waves like it was their last day. And at that moment, nothing else mattered but the sheer joy of being alive and feeling the power of the ocean beneath them. As Max bobbed up and down on his surfboard, scanning the horizon for the perfect wave, the ocean around him seemed to pulse with electric energy. The sun beat down on his skin, warming him even as the salty sea spray cooled him. It was a moment of perfect equilibrium, a suspended moment stretching into eternity. But beneath the surface, something lurked. Max's attention was so fixed on the rolling waves ahead that he didn't notice the dark shape moving beneath him. It was a creature of the deep, a shadowy silhouette that slid silently through the water, its powerful form invisible to the surfer above. The serene beauty of the ocean was shattered in an instant, as Max's body was jolted by an immense crushing pressure on his left leg. His mind raced, trying to make sense of the sudden attack as his eyes darted towards his limb. But what he saw was like a scene from a nightmare. The water around him was stained with deep foreboding red, and it became clear that the cause was the vicious predator that had latched onto him. With rows of razor-sharp teeth and a predatory gaze, a tiger shark was clamping down on Max's leg, its jaws locked in a deadly vice. In a frantic panic, Max struggled to free himself from the jaws of the tiger shark. But the more he fought, the harder the shark bit down, its powerful muscles shaking Max's body like a rag doll. It was as if he were nothing more than a plaything in the shark's relentless grip. The pain was excruciating, like nothing he had ever felt before. Each time the shark shook its head back and forth, Max felt his bones grinding together, his flesh tearing apart. He knew he had to find a way to escape, or he would die in the heart of the ocean at the mercy of the shark's savage hunger. Max's survival instincts kicked in, and he knew he had to fight for his life. With the adrenaline pumping through his veins, he focused all his energy on getting the shark to release him. Drawing on every ounce of strength, he balled his fist and launched a barrage of punches at the shark's face. Each blow landed with a sickening thud, the force of the impact reverberating through his arm. The sound of flesh hitting flesh echoed through the water, punctuated by the shark's agonized thrashing. Max's arm trembled with the strain of each blow, but he refused to give up. He kept hitting, his knuckles slamming into the shark's snout repeatedly, until finally, the shark released its grip on his leg. Max's heart pounded as he kicked and thrashed, trying to distance himself from the still dangerous predator as much as possible. Max's body was writhing in agony, every moment sending waves of pain coursing through his veins. As he struggled to swim towards the safety of the shore, a strange sensation started to take hold of his right leg. His muscles were spasming uncontrollably, and the feeling turned into something far more sinister. Max's heart pounded in his chest as he looked down towards his right leg, expecting to see it there as usual. But the sight that greeted him was nothing short of harrowing. His once whole leg was now nothing more than a bloody stump, the gaping wound still oozing blood and seawater. The jagged edges of the torn flesh were a testament to the ferocity of the shark's attack. Realizing that Max was in trouble, his friends sprang into action, racing towards him as soon as they saw him struggling in the water. One of them quickly improvised a tourniquet from the leash on his board, tightly wrapping it around Max's leg in a desperate bid to stem the bleeding. An ambulance was quickly summoned, and Max was rushed to the hospital, his life hanging in the balance. The surgeons worked tirelessly to repair the damage, carefully suturing the torn flesh and muscle back together. The operation was successful, but the road to recovery would be long and arduous. Max lay in the hospital bed for the next few weeks, his body battered and bruised, but his spirit unbroken. Despite the trauma he had suffered, he knew he was one of the fortunate ones and had been given a second chance at life. The sun was high in the sky, casting its warm rays upon the glistening sands of Manhattan Beach in California. The beach was a bustling hub of activity, with people of all ages strolling along the shoreline, their bare feet sinking into the soft grains of sand. The smell of salty air mingled with the sweet aroma of sunscreen as sunbathers basked in the morning glow. In the distance, the waves crashing against the shore were punctuated by the cries of seagulls wheeling overhead. And beyond that, out on the water, several fishing boats bobbed up and down on the gentle swells, their hulls glinting in the sun. Fishermen cast their lines into the sparkling depths, hoping to reel in a catch of the day. Amongst the sun-kissed beachgoers was Stephanie, a seasoned swimmer, passionate about testing her endurance in California's coastline's cool, refreshing waters. Her muscles flexed with each fluid motion as she cut through the waves with powerful strokes, propelling her forward with grace and determination. But as she glided along the shoreline, Stephanie's keen eye caught sight of a fishing boat in the distance, and upon closer inspection, she saw that one of the fishermen aboard was in a fierce struggle with a massive fish, its wriggling form causing the boat to rock back and forth on the water. Despite her curiosity, Stephanie continued her laps, her powerful strokes propelling her past the boat and its struggling occupant. Her mind focused solely on her training. She paid no heed to the commotion on the water, intent on pushing her limits and reaching her goals. Stephanie's body rippled with exertion as she sliced through the cool, crystalline waters, her mind fully absorbed in the rhythm of her strokes. As she made another turn, she caught a glimpse of the fishing boat again, just in time to witness a taut fishing line snap. As the line recoiled, Stephanie's gaze was drawn towards the end, where a great white shark writhed and twisted in the water, its body heaving with the effort of its struggle. Fear and adrenaline coursed through Stephanie's veins as she realized the danger beyond her. The shark, agitated and angry, and now free in the water, no telling where its razor-sharp teeth would strike next. Stephanie's arms and legs pumped furiously as she strove to put as much distance as possible between herself and the terrifying great white. But just as she began to think that she had made it to safety, a searing pain erupted across her torso, causing her to cry out in agony. Her head whipped around. She saw the source of the pain, and her heart sank in horror. The agitated shark had attacked, its jaws clamping down hard on her side, its razor-sharp teeth digging deep into her flesh. Stephanie could feel the crushing pressure of its bite, and hear the thrashing of its powerful tail as it tried to drag her under. Stephanie's world was a whirlwind of agony and chaos as the great white's teeth tore into her flesh, each bite sending searing waves of pain through her body. The beast thrashed and writhed in the water, its movements erratic and agitated, as if driven to a frenzy by some primal urge. Stephanie felt herself slipping into a state of panic, her thoughts racing as she struggled to escape this nightmare. But just as she thought all was lost, a sudden surge of adrenaline flooded her system, and she snapped back into the moment. With a fierce cry, she unleashed a flurry of punches and slaps with one of her free hands, striking out at the shark with all her might. But the creature was relentless, its jaws clamping down harder and harder on her side with each passing second, its eyes gleaming with a pang of savage hunger. With her body racked with pain and her strength rapidly dwindling, Stephanie felt a surge of desperation inside her. With no other options left, she reached out and grasped the great white's nose, clinging tight with all her might. The creature seemed taken aback momentarily, as if surprised by the unexpected turn of events. Seizing her chance, Stephanie used the shark's nose as leverage, summoning every ounce of her remaining strength to pry its jaws open. The beast thrashed and writhed, its massive body lashing back and forth in the water, but Stephanie held on tight, her grip unyielding. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The shark released its grip on her side and disappeared into the sea's murky depths, leaving Stephanie gasping for air and trembling with a mixture of relief and shock. Even as the shark disappeared into the murky depths, Stephanie was left writhing in agony, her body a mass of torn flesh and blood. She screamed for help, her voice ragged and hoarse, hoping against all hope that someone would hear her desperate cries. And then, like an answer to her prayers, a group of swimmers appeared on the scene, their strong arms reaching out to help her. They guided her to the shore, supporting her as she stumbled and fell, her body weakened by the trauma of the attack. With these strangers' help, Stephanie could hold on until the ambulance arrived, rushing her to the hospital before it was too late. The journey was a blur of pain and fear, the siren ringing in her ears like a terrible omen. In the end, Stephanie was left with emotional scars that would take years to heal, reminders of the brutal attack that had nearly claimed her life.